So my name is Josephine Moreno, and I am one of two graduate diversity officers here at UC Davis. I've been a faculty member, I've done a postdoc, a faculty member at a different university. I've been doing graduate diversity work now for nearly 20 years. I'm working on my 20th year. So I come to mentorship through a very broad but deep lens. And so I want to share with you and get you thinking about how to engage mentorship and be central to who you are. So keep responding to the polls. I'd love to see them fill out here as many of you join. And we do have a fairly big group. So, and it's really great if I could see your faces sometimes. So we're doing so much with Zoom that any way we can personalize it, particularly when we do breakout rooms, it's really nice to see one another. And so you get to see me, and it's nice to be able to see you as well. So my point here, mentee me, that is what is my part in the mentorship role? And I've kind of added the second piece, mentorship in an unprecedented time. That term unprecedented has become like this huge banner for what's happening right now. And it's not only unprecedented for you, it's unprecedented for us as well. And consequently, we're figuring out, how to connect with you. And I want to be sure that I'm talking or sharing with you ideas about mentorship today, given the time that we're in. And so just kind of keep that in mind. Keep going on the polls. If you could respond to them as you've entered, that would be terrific. And I will move on as well. So let's see here. So as I mentioned, I had started with this idea of us empowers mini me. And I guess my point here is that how do we create or participate in a mentoring relationship that is not a duplication of a faculty member, so to speak? When from our polling, we're going to see results of being a very, very different kind of having very different demographics than 50 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. And that is that there's more women in different fields, in STEM fields, in all fields or male dominated fields. There's more people who have intersecting identities. There's more folks who are gaining access who have been historically underrepresented in graduate education. And so this idea of, how to secure mentorship that is not the needs of what was thought to be mentorship when we were not as diverse as we are. And so there's an idea of not duplicating, who already is faculty. Rather, how can we gain resources and support and a relationship here that is not like what has been established in the past. It's specific to oneself. And I can just think about my own journey that I needed that when I was going through grad school. And I'm just assuming that that is something that each one of you do as well. So we're talking about the mentoring relationship. And a mentor and a mentee, and you'll see that there's this image kind of makes a particular, well, it has certain implications, right? That may be what? Same gender, maybe, has the same background, but the mentoring relationship is something that all of you would benefit from. And so that's what we're talking about today. I also, I want to encourage you to use chat, and for the next hour, as my colleague is supporting this workshop with me, I'm going to ask her to help me respond to questions occasionally from chat, and we'll stop and take questions regularly as well. So I just want to be sure that we will be responding to your questions. I'm sorry. I'm looking at all these different monitors and the poll and all of these other things. So keep on working on the poll if you're just popping in. So we're talking about this relationship, right? Okay. So let's go on. What is mentoring? I always like to start with, what is mentoring? Ideas that you want to pop into the chat room. What is mentoring to you? And we have folks here that are at all different levels. Some are doctoral students, some are master's students. We have fields from arts and humanities, from STEM fields, even someone from veterinary science, social sciences, certainly. We also have folks who are, first generation to go to college, first generation in grad school. We have folks who are in STEM fields and women in STEM fields. We have folks from the LGBTQIA community. So, what is mentoring to us is the question. And I'm going to ask Teresa. Teresa, I don't see the chat option now.
Okay, yeah. So I can just tell you there's some great responses in here. Let me just run through them quickly. Pavel says guidance. Sydney says transparency. Corey bringing up the next generation. Greg acting as a role model. Bo preparation. Chloe one-on-one teaching that extends past a curriculum. Jackie perspective. Greg empowering the mentee. So a nice sample of great responses.
That's great. And it does, your responses kind of hone in on a couple of pieces. Someone who is the mentor, oneself as the mentee, relationships, and what are the elements of that relationship. So here's a basic kind of description of mentoring. And many of the elements that you've mentioned in the chat are a part of this definition of mentoring. And it's certainly a relationship where you have two people. One is more experienced, one is the mentee. And what is it that's happening between these folks? Knowledge, sharing of knowledge, advice, challenges, counsel, and support of the goals of the prodigy or the mentee. So this is a great way of understanding very concisely of what mentoring looks like in academia. And I want to be really clear about that because it might have different characteristics if it's outside of academia, but we're talking about academia today. So benefits, and I would love to hear from you in chat. What do you think are the benefits of mentorship? And I'm going to cover, do we have, let me look at our polling and if we have any
the poll is actually 100%.
Looks like okay. So
you want me to end the polling so we can share the results?
Got it. And share results. There you go. Okay. So while we're sharing, if you have ideas about, what are the benefits of mentorship in academia, just pop those into the chat room. So here we have some of you are master's students, first year, second year, first year doctoral students. We have a few of you. Some of you are doctoral students doing coursework, and that's kind of significant. It's leading up to your exams. We have some candidates as well. Doctoral dissertating, we have one person. Postdoc, we have a postdoc in the group. And then look at the fields that are represented here. Arts and humanities, somebody from management, graduate school of management, health fields, certainly a lot from STEM, and seems to be the biggest group. And then think about what are some of our characteristics. First generation college, and I just want to be really clear about what that is. We define first generation as an individual who has achieved a bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, and with neither of their parents achieving a bachelor's degree, okay? That means that neither one of one's parents achieved a bachelor's degree. and they could have taken some classes, college camp classes. They could have been awarded an AA, an associate's degree, but not a bachelor's degree. And so that's kind of a demarcation that's quite common. So I just want you to know that. And then there's also, the idea of first generation to attend grad school, which, overlaps with first generation to college, but not necessarily. Okay, so some folks may be first to graduate school in their family, but have had parents who've attended college and received a bachelor's degree. So it can be made up of a couple of different groups. First year grad student, domestic postdoctoral scholar we have here, certainly folks who are employed by the university. And let's look at those, because I think that's really helpful to know. We have a lot of teaching assistants in the group, GSRs in the group, some folks who may not be employed or employed elsewhere. And, some folks might be on fellowship or scholarship for the first year. So we have differing backgrounds. And my point is that, and going back to the Austin Powers point, is that we do have different demographics than perhaps a large percentage of the faculty, particularly in traditional fields. So we have different needs because we have different criteria and different characteristics in terms of our backgrounds. So let's think about postdoctoral benefits then. And Teresa, could you share a little bit of the chat input?
Sure. Do you want me to take the poll down, or are you still good?
Oh yeah, I could stop sharing that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So in chat, let's see, it looks like we had security, support, personalized advice about how to navigate technical and career challenges, gaining experience and advice, graduation with a competitive CV or resume, and perspective.
Okay, so definitely advice, counsel, career advice, as well as graduate student advice in terms of your grad program. And those are all definitely benefits. And there may in fact be benefits that you might not have thought about. So certainly, professional development, exposure to networks. And if we think about that, when they introduce you at a conference to other people in the field or in a field that you're really interested in, they're exposing you to another network. But there's also some other benefits. Research demonstrates that individuals who are mentored in graduate school have a higher pre-doctoral productivity. And I think that's really interesting. And maybe that means that they're having more direction from that mentor. And when they're kind of up against a wall or it's not helpful, somebody's redirecting them. So that productivity comes into play. Certainly, you get through faster, oftentimes when you have a good mentoring relationship. And there's also better feelings about the doctoral and master's programs when you have had very good mentorship. So I want you to keep these in mind. I don't want to overlook our postdoc though. And so postdoctoral benefits, I'm just going to go ahead and bring those up. So higher salary, possibly early employment, higher career stature. And this is important because if you're in a STEM field, you're expected to do a postdoc, aren't you? So having that mentorship to launch you is very valuable. And oftentimes it's the door that's opened to a postdoctoral position, that is having a mentor. So certainly there are benefits to mentorship as a postdoc as well. Someone is, again, providing you with guidance. Okay, so let's chat here. We have the mentee. I'm going to continue with the same image here, but notice that I've put in an extra arrow. And it's like, who's in the driver's seat in mentoring relationships? And we have two people here. But what I want to have, to ask you all to do is have a quick chat in smaller groups about not only the mentee and the mentor, but is there anybody else who might be influencing, advocating, facilitating, and who might those individuals be? So let me, oops, let me go back, sorry. I'm gonna go up here and let's see if I could do breakout rooms. There they are. Okay, so normally it will tell me how many people in each room. Let's see, assign automatically. Teresa, how many people do we have in our group here right now?
We have 37, but some of them may be on the phone and the computer too, but
okay,
roughly 37.
Okay, so I'm going to say 10. That's 3 to 4 participants. Okay, so I'm going to break out, and what I want you to talk about is who are those folks who have a say in this mentoring, who are advocating, who are facilitating, who are involved, who are the participants. And so have a quick chat and put your ideas very quickly into the chat option, if you don't mind. So let me open those rooms and I'll give you 5 minutes to chat, okay? Okay, welcome back everybody. So who's in the driver's seat in mentoring relationships? Would anybody like to share? I'm looking for some ideas in chat. Certainly the mentee and the mentor. Who else might influence that relationship? Both, someone said. Thank you, Esther. Definitely. Who else? Think about how you've had relationships in the past. What has influenced that formation of a relationship? Greg, professors and grad advisors. Bob, funding. That's interesting. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. Other advisors, good idea. That might be faculty, for example. Let's see, two-way street. Chloe says, David, expectations of where you're hopeful to be, what you hope to achieve. Okay, so sometimes, you know, who influences relationship is a part of the structure of the grad program and of the discipline. So for example, if you're in a discipline where you actually are working in a faculty lab, that person, it becomes your mentor because you have these similar research interests, and then you are working in that lab, maybe working on a larger project and biting off a piece of that, or you're working on a project that's related to that, to the focus of the lab. So that's an example of structural kinds of influences, but other kinds of structure might be where students have a rotation in the first year, and through that rotation get to know faculty and learn also more about what their likes or preferences are in terms of topics. And then there's in social sciences and humanities that often may not be the kind of structure that's in place. You might have a graduate faculty mentor who works with all of the new cohort. And then there's an expectation that one reaches out to different faculty. And sometimes, you know, it might be a couple of years before a graduate student actually secures a faculty mentor. And that can be really challenging. So what you want to find out is, you know, what is the norm in your grad program? And one of the key people who can help you with that is the graduate coordinator. Okay, that's a staff person who knows nearly everything that's going on in your grad program. And consequently, that person can advocate, can suggest, can facilitate a mentoring relationship. So don't overlook how important that graduate coordinator is to a possible mentoring relationship, okay? Others, let's see if I advisors, other advisors. So it might be a faculty member that you have engaged with that's related kind of tangentially to your research interest. It might be somebody else who you seek out in terms of advising here at the university, and it might be somebody you know. Maybe it's another graduate student who provides, input or facilitates a conversation or a suggestion or advice. So the relationship can be beyond two people and might be influenced by others. And it's not a bad thing. And in fact, knowing who can also facilitate a mentoring relationship for you can be quite helpful. Has anybody experienced having somebody who has been either their grad coordinator or somebody else? Esther says that, yes, she loves her grad coordinator. That's how important those folks are to you as a grad student in particular, but also as a postdoc as well. Okay, I'll keep looking over at the chat and we'll keep going. So, this relationship is important. So I want to also share with you from the mentor side of the relationship. They supply training, their instruction. Certainly the training is important to them if you're in a lab kind of group or if you're working on a project, because that training and instruction is going to facilitate new knowledge. It's going to facilitate you learning how to have a particular skill. Certainly, whether a faculty member knows it or not, they're role modeling themselves in terms of what their career is like and how they not interact, but what their role is in their discipline as faculty or as advisors. But they're certainly role modeling that intentionally or unintentionally. I also want to bring up a couple other points that mentorship is really important because there's also a level of protection that a faculty member provides in this relationship. And it may be a kind of protection that you may not even know about. And so think about that. How could they be protecting you? I'll give you an example that one time happened to me. And that was that as I was completing my dissertation, we were all, the whole grad program was going to a professional meeting, and we had all submitted abstracts to present our research. And but the conference said an individual could only be on, I think it was five presentations as an author or co-author. And so my advisor said, Josephine, listen, I'm on so many. I have 3 myself, and I can't be on over 5. So just make yourself the first author and only author. Well, then because of that, another faculty member came up to me and said, hey, what do you think you're doing? You should have your advisor on there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to my advisor. And my advisor had to follow up with her colleague and say, hey, that was direction from me. Josephine didn't do that on her own without my understanding. And so in that way, she was protecting me from this kind of negative situation that was happening. But the protection can happen in so many different other ways. But it is something that you could benefit from. And in that particular situation, I benefited from. And believe it or not, sometimes you become friends with your mentor and certainly later colleagues. And that's really important to know as well. So there's a lot of roles that the mentor could take on. And you as the mentee, you want to benefit from all of this and more if you can. So let's talk about that part, your part. So we're in an odd, very difficult, unprecedented, we hear that term like way too much now, but it is, and it's still in effect. And so I want you to think about a couple of things. In fact, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do another breakout session, but I want you to think about given the situation that we're in, and this is particularly different for first-year grad students that are in their first year of a master's or PhD program. And then also it might be quite different if you are in your second, third, fourth year, because you know what graduate school has been like pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, right? So if we could share in our groups, what are my needs right now? What do I identify as my needs in terms of mentorship? And particularly in this quarter, but also given that we don't know when this is going to end. And so we might very well have in this unprecedented year new needs that have emerged because of the situation that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to go up and do breakout rooms again. And this time, I'd like you to talk about what are my needs and write them down for yourself. What are my needs this quarter? What are my needs for the academic year, given our situation? So let's see here. Let me look at my options. Breakout rooms. So, hi. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I'd love to hear from you, like unmute yourself and let's share, what are our particular needs? Let's start with what our mentoring needs are. Then we'll talk about our other needs if you want to share. But who would like to start? Just unmute yourself and share with the group.
You might want to repeat that, Josephine, because for me, at least, you froze up before.
Oh.
I didn't quite catch the first part of what you said. Okay. What do you want them to share?
So I'm asking you to share first, what are your mentoring needs? And then we'll follow that up with what are our other needs, to have a successful quarter and academic year. So let's first talk about our mentoring needs, and all the others influence that. But what are our mentoring needs currently? So if you could just unmute yourself and share with the group, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll start. Start? Okay, sorry. So I have two needs. The first one is applying for research funding this summer, and the other one is preparing to instruct a course for the first time.
Okay. And how can a mentor maybe help that situation, right? Okay, great. Who else would like to share? Mentoring needs first.
I'm just going to read Bob's because he's in a busy lab that's noisy.
Okay.
I want a mentor that cares about my well-being as much as the results I produce in lab.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Care about what your needs are, and then also, in addition to being productive in the lab. Okay.
I can go. So right now I'm in the writing stages of my dissertation, and I think my advisor, who is also my mentor, is great at assisting me through that process. Perhaps one thing that I will say that I need is I'm starting to think about that transition, what's next as well, and I'm making sure that I'm really prepared while I'm here still in the university. So that guidance of, okay, take advantage of doing this, or think about this other program, or look at this, webinars, things like that, preparing and just making sure that not only I have the academic knowledge, but have the transferable skills to enter the job market in a year or two. So
advice or guidance on professional skills.
Yes.
And preparation for, your next step.
Yes.
Career step. Okay. Thank you, Esther. Who else would like to share? What are your mentoring needs? How about you first years? What are your mentoring needs this fall quarter, unprecedented quarter? Just unmute yourself and share with the group.
I'm a, I guess, third year PhD student, and I'm unable to talk to my advisor that much. He's very busy, as a lot of us probably have advisors like that. So when I talk to him, it tends to be about the very most important things, and sometimes just logistics and so on. So kind of in the in-between times, I really benefit from talking to folks and just kind of brainstorming about my writing and things like that, and just kind of having a collaborative opportunities to, talk about things. So I guess I like those informal opportunities and just need to seek those out.
Okay. And so who could be a part of your mentoring group? You might be thinking about, David, and that is that, remember that there's a lot of faculty who've never delivered remote learning ever. And so just like me and having technology problems today, the same thing happens, and they may or may not have like somebody who's supporting them at the same time. And so it's teaching in this environment is really challenging for a lot of faculty, because it just is requiring very different skills. And so the time is going by the wayside, isn't it, David? And so you have to be really focused when you meet with that faculty member. And so where are you getting the other kinds of mentoring and guidance is what you might think about. So we'll talk about that. Anybody else want to add before we talk about other needs?
Hi, I'm a fourth year graduate student, and I'm about to take my qualifying exam hopefully by the end of this quarter. It's been tough to kind of wrangle my committee members given everyone's commitments during COVID, but I've been relying on my mentor to help me process through my feelings about having a hard time scheduling. So she's been very, very helpful in terms of like, if we have to delay, it'll be okay. It won't affect my productivity, but also trying to collect dissertation data during a pandemic when our movement is really restricted. I've relied on her a lot in terms of navigating the bureaucratic aspect of what we're able to do in the lab that's safe and helpful for the graduate timeline. But I'm also gearing up to teach my first class in the summer session. So I am relying on one of my teaching mentors for that. And she and I are going to co-teach the class together in the spring prior to me teaching it alone. And I think that's going to be a really great opportunity to really learn about teaching and grow from that mentor relationship.
Great, great. So yes, the mentorship, and specific about this year, and particularly if you're in the middle of collecting data, and even you need to be in the lab, for example, or you need to be in the field, and how is this unprecedented time affecting you? And so Chloe gave us a great example of how her faculty mentor is able to facilitate other options for her, alternatives to what normally would happen. So having that discussion with them is really important in terms of the mentorship. Let's talk about other needs. So in this unprecedented time, because it affects our mentoring relationship, it affects what our needs are academically. What are some of the non-mentorship needs that can influence mentorship? What did you talk about in your group, or what did you identify for yourself that you feel comfortable sharing? Anybody want to put up their hand or just unmute yourself?
Hi, my name is Sydney, and something I'm looking for is trust. I found that it has been wavering during this time, especially I have changed labs, so I'm trying to also make sure that I'm in the place where I can call home and know that I'm in a safe environment without the research and with the research. So.
Okay, so that personal level of trust is something that you really need and need to establish for you to be successful. Thank you, Sydney, for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, so I do want to mention a few needs that you might be going through your mind, but you don't feel comfortable sharing. So let me just go on with this slide. So in the second bullet point, well, there's one bullet point and then there's a second level. We might have needs of, mental health support. We might have needs of just where do I start in terms of securing a mentor or securing a mentor I trust? We might have needs of food because we're food insecure. We might have needs of teaching support, which a few of you are going to begin teaching for your first time. And where can we support you at UC Davis for teaching support, for example? Or how can I get out and have some physical exercise? The ARC is closed and the gyms are closed. Where can I exercise just to keep, myself in shape? So these are all needs that we have that some of them may be ongoing. Some of them might be certainly affected significantly because we're in this particularly unprecedented time. Certainly we all have these individual needs that might be quite different from what a faculty member is accustomed to thinking about. But I can say that there are academic needs and personal needs, and they all contribute to you feeling comfortable in your current situation. And there's some things that we're experiencing together, but there's also, our individual mindsets, personalities, backgrounds that come into play here too. So, some of us might feel okay with being at home and working independently more than what we would have during the normal course of a year. And others feel like a real need to interact with others. So, and that's okay. The question is that how do we engage our faculty mentors to perhaps provide some of these needs? They're not going to be able to provide all of them, but we can point you in the direction of where you can secure some of these needs. So let's talk about, so I've put a few things up here. We talked about what your needs are for the quarter and academic year. And there are a lot of resources, and you've probably been like inundated with, if you need if you want to get some counseling, you're feeling really stressed, here are these resources, and they're coming in from all different places. And I know this is happening because even for me, the whole social justice issue of graduate education, of graduate admissions, of graduate school access, of higher education access, all of a sudden there's all kinds of folks who are addressing social justice, from speakers to new units on campus. And so even for me, I'm getting bombarded in the same way. But how can we see through that and pick out the resource that we need, right? I want to emphasize again how important your graduate coordinator is. And that is how important they are to understanding the resources that are regularly available and perhaps resources that are newly available. And consequently, it's really important to establish a relationship with that person. You might need to just reintroduce yourself and say, hey, I know I haven't been very interactive, but I really value your input. Could you suggest such and such? Because I have a need of. And so that grad coordinator has a lot of knowledge and experience. And so I really recommend that you call upon that person as a really important individual to your mentoring as well. So I also want to share about cohorts. How many of you, let's see a show of your electronic hand. How many of you actually network or connect with your cohort or with other graduate students on a regular basis? Let's just see a show of hands there. And it's under the participants, so you can see who's putting their hands up. How many of you interact with with other graduate students on a regular basis? Okay. Great, thank you. So your graduate students, other graduate students, they are your peers. Some of them have some of the experience, a year more or more experience than you. They are a really valuable resource, particularly during this time. And so having a regular check-in and discussion with them, I highly recommend it. And if there's anybody who has recently done this and begun to kind of build a community with their cohort, if you'd like to share, just unmute yourself and share with the group. Veronica is sharing that it's harder this quarter to meet new grad students. You know, one way you could do that in your field at least is to ask if your graduate coordinator could forward a message to the new cohort or forward a message to, you know, all of the graduate students that you're looking to talk about this or to meet up and chat once a week. And so you may not have direct access to them right away, but your grad coordinator can introduce you or forward a message on. And I have done that even for myself in terms of students who want to connect with other historically underrepresented students or first-gen students. So there's a lot of folks who can facilitate connecting with your cohort or other grad students. So be sure to think about that. I want to just point out that these are a few strategies that are unique to this year, particularly how important it is to get needs met. And in fact, how many of you are new to Davis and living in Davis this year? Go ahead and put your hand down. I'm going to clear and put your hand up if this is your first year that you've moved to Davis and you're new to Davis and you haven't been out that much. It's the pandemic, but you would like to know more about it, about living in Davis. How many of you could say that? Okay, so Shasha, Catherine, Dante are new to Davis. And I say that because even if you're new and you think, okay, I need to physically get out. I don't know if there's lots of green spaces here. And I see people out jogging. I see people out on their bikes in the green spaces in Davis. And so that's an opportunity that you may not have known exists. And even my husband and I are still exploring, and we've lived here many years, exploring new places that we could ride our bikes in and around Davis, because we're not going to the gym either during this pandemic. So again, these are new opportunities for you to think about. And I see folks who are chiming in. Macheo has said that he or she has created a study thesis Zoom session with their cohort. So that's a great strategy. And also remember that your cohort can provide you with guidance, with mentorship, and they're a great ally for you as well. Okay, so let's talk about mentoring strategies. Right now, while our time is so condensed, and particularly with faculty, you want to think about how am I going to meet with faculty? And it takes a little bit of courage, and I encourage you to be courageous, and that is to introduce yourself, okay? Be concise, but introduce yourself if you want to get to know a faculty member. And that's one way to begin connecting with faculty who you might benefit from their guidance at a later time. But communication is even more crucial right now. And so reaching out, introducing yourself, don't feel like that you can't do that. Get started with a very brief introduction. And so communication, not only in reaching out, but following up. And I've mentioned here, keep commitments, communicate appreciation. Definitely these are all helpful in terms of being a really good mentee, but you have to get the communication started, right? Also, somebody in the chat mentioned, I want to be valued for not only what I produce in the lab, but also for who I am as a person, basically. And how you convey that is through the values and that you demonstrate in the work that you do. That you can certainly, you don't have to say that you need trust, but you can demonstrate it in your conversations, in following up with faculty, in reaching out to faculty at this time. And so these actions are actions that you would need to establish a mentoring relationship one way or another, but they're even more critical right now. And that is that level of communication. So think about it. How many of you have received a message from a faculty member in your graduate program? Hey, can you go ahead? Thank you. We are trying to work out of the same home and eat lunch and put on the microwave. So just keep that in mind. This communication, if you haven't responded to someone in your grad program, coordinator, your peers, a faculty member, you need to do that because you want to get on their calendar. And sometimes it's like, okay, who manages your calendar? Let me find that out. Does someone manage your calendar? Gosh, does someone manage your calendar? And so understanding how to make those appointments and check in regularly can be quite valuable. Remember that if you're working with your grad advisor, that they're benefiting from your work as well, right? And you may not think that they're benefiting, but you could also demonstrate that benefit. So for example, if you come across a great article that is related to the work that you're doing, or that is related to a common interest, download it as a PDF, send it off to that faculty advisor. And that's a way of they're benefiting from your plowing through the literature, for example. And so that's one way that faculty mentor benefits. And they certainly benefit from your success because your successes are identified on their CV as their success as well. Some of these other things I know are important and may have to kind of be spread out a little bit more, like meeting deadlines. If you are struggling with meeting deadlines right now, be sure to communicate that to an advisor or to a grad coordinator or to the head graduate advisor. And we're asking faculty right now to also be sensitive to the time that we're in. And they might not know, what's happening with our family, but they may not know that you're trying to educate and facilitate the education of your children at the same time. They may not know that you are, checking in with a family member regularly who is not well. So it's not that you desire them just to we want them to be compassionate, but you have to communicate what you're going through that's unique at this time. So, and you don't want to make excuses, you just want to be real about it. And if you need to, perhaps you can check in with the grad coordinator and say, this is my situation right now. And I want them to know, I want this faculty member to know, and would you be willing to share that with my faculty advisor? Or so you can ask somebody else to help facilitate a conversation that you might find difficult. And maybe next time around you won't find it difficult, right? Your advisors are still going to have goals. They might have to extend their deadlines also. And, but we're trying to meet their goals in at the same time as meeting your own goals. And there's something here also that I put in here is about maintaining a sense of humor, because it's just crazy right now. It's just crazy. And so even the technology problems I had today or have had in other meetings, I have to try and laugh about them instead of like feeling really frustrated about them. And, you know, so if you see a similar thing happening in a Zoom meeting that you're in, maybe you could say, hey, if you make me co-host, I'll monitor the chat for you, or I'll ask questions from the chat so you don't have to do that. Or, you know, so just, you know, trying to create an atmosphere where we're understanding of one another can really go a long way with faculty advisors and mentors. Again, communicating through email is really critical, and we may not be able to do in-person communication right now, but what other form of communication can you do to aid what you want to achieve out of that mentorship? And so and another thing is actually communicating your goals. So you might say, you might be, you know, ending your coursework and you need to communicate to your advisor that, yes, I'm thinking about my exams. This is kind of my timeline. What suggestion do you have given our circumstances? And kind of putting it out there with that faculty mentor. So sometimes you do need to actually lay out what your timeline or what you're thinking about, and then ask for their suggestions. Bob here says that they're hoping to improve their relationship with their PI. They have a hands-off approach, is nice when things are going well, but it's been deteriorating a bit. So when you need more interaction, you may just need to say, right now, because interaction is so isolating, if we could connect a little more frequently, I'd appreciate that. So you may just have to kind of put that out there to that PI. And it may remind them like, oh yeah, God, I haven't been connecting with you. And just kind of jog them in a kind way. But I do think that you have to communicate with them about the need to connect, particularly if there's, if you're coming to a deadline, if you're coming to a point where you need their advice, and maybe they might have some suggestions about somebody else that you can also connect with. So you're not solely dependent upon that person. So Bob, you might think about, you know, first reaching out to your PI and sharing that given, you know, this unprecedented time, if we can communicate a little more frequently, that would be really helpful. And let them come back and respond to that. And maybe it's going to be that they're going to say, okay, 15 minutes. I can give you 15 or maybe 30 minutes every 2 or 3 weeks. But then you get on their calendar. And so getting on their calendar is a part of the issue. So if you're not on your faculty advisor's calendar right now, you need to be on it. And even if it's a month from now, or it's 6 weeks from now, or or longer, you need to check in, right after fall quarter, because you're in coursework, and then you're going to be preparing for your exams. So get on their calendar. Right now, that is absolutely critical. How many of you, let's see a show of hands, how many of you are currently on your faculty advisor's calendar for your next meeting?
May I say something, Josephine?
Go ahead.
So calendar is actually a really interesting thing you bring up. In my case, my advisor's on sabbatical right now. On top of that, he's recently lost his mother. So I am trying to be, of course, very empathetic there, and trying to be compassionate as well. But deadlines are approaching. He's assured me that I'm on his priority list, of course. But sometimes I wonder, because it's like I said, it's been recent.
Yeah. So you're worried about your progress, but you also want to be compassionate about what's happening with your faculty advisor's situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's tough, because having lost my mother in the last couple of years, and my husband lost his mother last year, I can really relate to the example that you've given. But maybe what you need is really short check-ins and say, hey, can we just have a quick exchange about this? So be really focused in what you need. And if it's just, and lay it out that way, Corey, that I know you're really busy. I'm concerned about my next step. And if I can just get your opinion on this, I would deeply appreciate it. And so be very precise about what you want, very concise as well. Yeah. And one of the things that the graduate dean just told all of us in our unit is, hey, if you want something from me, put it in the subject line. So you're sending me too long of emails, and if you need something from me right away, put it in the subject line. That was really good advice. Okay. And so
I'm just also trying to be careful not to be like, try not to be careful just to be like completely not acknowledging what he's going through. Of course, you know what I mean? But I have been concise. I have been like trying to show him that I'm doing some of this work on my own, and that I just need these things from him, and then that's it, then
if it's something that
everything
only
is accounted for. Yeah.
If it's something that only that person can respond to, then you'll have to ask. But if it's something that maybe if there's a designated graduate chair in your program, go to that person.
Okay. Yeah, they're on my committee as well, so I can talk with them as well.
Yes. Committee members. Yeah. And so what you're trying to find sometimes is a substitute, right? That's what we have to do when when we have a faculty advisor who's away or on sabbatical. And in this particular case, you understand what's happening. And so there are some other faculty that you can ask. And even if you don't have a committee together, that graduate faculty who's designated to advising grad students is your next best person to ask. But thank you, Corey, for sharing. That's a really important role.
Thank you.
We are getting towards the end here, and so I want to be sure to respond to any questions, very specific questions. And if you want to put them in chat or go ahead and unmute yourself, I'm very happy to chat with you about that, and maybe we can all learn from your question. Anyone? So I'm clearing our hands. And I know folks are signing off, but if you have any questions that I can respond to, I'm very happy to do that. Okay, so it looks like we don't have questions at this time, but let me just say that if you do in the future, I'm very happy to respond. If there's a need, I could also check in with my colleague who's in STEM to respond if it's very specific. but feel free that you can call upon me as a resource. I'm one of many resources on this campus, and you've been inundated with messages about resources. Take a look at them, okay? Take a look at, if you're teaching, how you can teach your undergraduates in a way that is, culturally sensitive, for example. And definitely take advantage of those resources. You don't have to jump from one resource to another that's all addressing a similar issue, but select one and check in with that particular resource in terms of how they can support you. Certainly in terms of mentoring, we're in a really challenging time for mentees and mentors. And probably the most important piece of this is communicating with that mentor, or beginning to communicate with mentors, potential mentors, because it's better to secure a faculty mentor earlier rather than later. So I just strongly suggest that. And I thank all of you who have hung in there to the end. Vivian, Veronica, Shasha, Maychow, Lindsay, Lonnie, Catherine, Glory, Esther, Corey, Caleb, Bob. Thank you to all of you. And I look forward to receiving questions in the future. And I'm very happy to respond confidentially to any questions that you might have.